Hey friend, I've heard you loud and clear. You chased on down on the beginner select. You've got cattle because he comes with the game, and you happen to have pulled key. And so now you want to know how to effectively make this fire team and make key work to your benefit. So today's guide is all about the man over here, and I'm going to show you how I build him and how I run him to get On's damage juiced up and really make use of the burn stacks and the power that you get with like Sacred Flame and things like that. So as always, on your way in, like and a sub would be tremendous. I'm getting close to 5,000, which is crazy to me. So it'd be great to see that number tick on over. And with that, let's just dive right in. So Key is a Saboteur, which means he's here to provide debuffs. He's not necessarily meant to be your main DPS unit within the game, but he helps enable your DPS. That said, because of burns and some of the things he does give a little bit of decent off-turn DPS, or off DPS, not off-turn, but off DPS. So you still get some of that outside of him, which is great. Let's look at his awareness 0 to start. And so when using skills, gains one chosen one stack, and the chosen one stack increases party's fire damage by 5%. And when he attacks with a skill, the target takes 4% of his current HP as damage. So he is consuming his HP, which is why we'll talk about his stats being max HP later. Lasts for 2 turns, stacks up to 5 times, and then the chosen one's duration is managed individually for each stack. So like one stack can fall off, another one goes on. It doesn't necessarily refresh all chosen one stacks. And so the thing to know is you're really just trying to keep building these chosen one stacks. You want to get those rolling, keep them going, and just really enable damage as a part of that. And so then let's dive into his passive and skills. The first one is Uplifting Embers, increase fire damage, and Elemental Ailment. Now, if you don't know what elemental ailments are, these are your burn, freeze, shock, and windswept. So these are, the things that attach to an elemental attack itself. For example, you get burned from your fire units. You might get windswept from something like a Morgana or a Fleuret, etc. So increased fire damage and elemental ailment damage dealt to foes with Sacred Flame, we'll get into that in a second, by 6% based on the number of chosen one stacks. So again, you're going to see this chosen one pop up. You want to get your stacks going. Eventually you want to get Sacred Flame going. And then you're just going to be increasing like this burn damage because you've got the stacking on itself. And then the other one is Hot to Touch. Increase fire damage based on max HP, increased by 1% for every 300 HP. So remember, you're going to be pairing him with fire units, someone like On right now. And so the more you can get his max HP up, the more percentage you're going to get out of this other passive here. Let's talk about the skills. Ring of Fire. This one can do a couple things. So it deals fire damage to a single foe by nature of the skill itself. It's based on his max HP and it inflicts burn. So right off the bat, it's a great skill just to launch a burn. That said, if the target you're hitting is already burning, this becomes AoE. And so then it gives a chance to put burn on everybody. So this power is great at, getting an enemy burning and then attempting to spread that burn by using this on that already burning enemy. So if you start a fight and someone has burn on them, you can try right off the bat to get an AoE and then hopefully burn everybody else and get them rolling into that stack. And then that will tie into his skill 2. His skill 2 will deal fire damage to all foes, so it's AoE, again based off of his max HP, and activate a fire technical. So there's different kinds of technicals in this game, and if you click here you can kind of see them. So depending on what ailments, the elemental ailments the enemy has, you're going to get a different effect. So because they're burning, you're going to get Fire Burn. Fire Burn activates on burning foes and increases damage dealt to the target by 2%. So you get a little bit of extra, damage rolling on here. After the attack, based on the number of foes that were inflicted with burn, you gain 2 chosen stacks. So if you have multiple, characters burning, then you get multiple stacks. And then finally, inflict Sacred Flame on burning foes for 2 turns. And Sacred Flame means when a foe is taking an action, deal fire damage equal to 21.3% of his max HP. So, Key's max HP. So there's a lot to take in there. But what you need to know is basically you're going to do an AoE attack. That attack's going to grant you chosen stacks based on how many characters were burning. You're going to trigger Fire Technical, which just gives more damage. And then you're going to put on a little debuff into all the different enemies that were burning called Sacred Flame, which makes them take more damage at the start of their turn when they go to take an action. So the goal of Key is to, get these Chosen One stacks going, keep everything burning as best you can, and then keep them in Sacred Flame as much as possible. Cleansing Flame, you can, actually I don't think you can see because my head's in the way, but I have not leveled Cleansing Flame yet. I don't use this power that much. I'm not going to say it's a bad power. It's not quite that detrimental, but effectively single target deals fire damage to a foe equal to, again, a certain amount of your max HP, and it activates the fire technical like we just talked about a second ago. And when they have Sacred Flame, so you've already, used your skill 2, deals an additional technical and increases damage by 30%. The reason I don't typically use this power all that often is I'm usually trying to manage my burn, keeping them burning with, skill 1 a lot of the times, and then keeping them in the Sacred Flame, Sacred Fire status. And so I just usually am using skill 1 and skill 2 to manage that together. And there's different ways you can do this. I'll show it to you in a battle here in a few minutes. So it's not that Cleansing Flame is a bad power. It's just I typically am more worried about the burn stacks and Sacred Flame and just keeping that going, because that's really what's enabling the DPS within this for like your ons and such. And then finally, the highlight's a really good one. Increases all foes' fire damage taken by its percentage and deals fire damage equal to a certain amount of Key's health. Also inflicts burn for 2 turns. So when you launch this, you're putting burn on everybody. You're going to do damage based on your max HP, and then you're going to increase the fire damage that the enemy takes. So again, you got to think about this in combination with units like an On who can take advantage of this fire. If you're running in with, say, Joker can't take effect of, extra fire damage. And so obviously his synergy is going to be best with fire type units. But that's it. That's his skills. Let's jump into the awarenesses and see, what does he gain by going up? And again, because this is a 4-star standard, you may pull copies of him as time goes on. I've already pulled 1 duplicate. So awareness 1, on action for each stack of Chosen One, 12% chance to inflict burn on 1 random enemy. So if you're building your Chosen stacks, this becomes more and more reliable. Great power. Awareness 2. On his action for each burning foe, increase his own damage by 8% for 1 turn. Counts up to 3 foes. So if you have if you're fighting, say, 5 foes, you only get credit for 3 of them. This one's not bad. It's a little bit extra damage for him. It would have been awesome if this was for the party, but it's really just his damage. Awareness 3, you're going to get your typical couple skills, extra levels. Awareness 4, for your highlight, increase all foes' fire damage by 30.8%. So this is increasing that fire damage benefit. So a really great highlight boost. Awareness 5, again, you're getting some extra skills and certain things, some extra levels in your skills. And your awareness 6, when your Chosen One reaches 10 stacks, increase party's fire damage by 30% for 2 turns. You will not hate life if you get to awareness 6. This is fantastic. So he has really good awarenesses for the way that he supports the party. Aside from maybe awareness 2, it's just not as amazing as, say, the more beneficial ones to the party. But if you happen to get to awareness 6, then you're bumping up more fire damage through the highlights, through Chosen One stacks, and it just really aligns to his kit. So that's his powers. So let's talk about the weapons. His base 4-star is okay. Maybe not great. Increases max HP, which of course we want for him, and increases Sacred Flame damage by 34%. So that's not terrible per se. It's just there's not a ton going on here. And then if we look at his 5-star, which I don't have, so I'll come up into the banner here to look at it. On his 5-star, increase max HP by 30%. So you've got obviously a nice boost on the max HP at the default breakthrough level. When inflicting burn on a foe, increase target's damage taken by 18% for 2 turns. And remember, if you get into certain awarenesses, you have better chances of inflicting burn. Or if you're using skill 1, you inflict burn, or skill 1 and a target already burning, you can spread that. So there's a lot of chances to get this to kick off. And then for each Chosen One stack, increases damage by 6%. So again, his own individual damage I worry less about. I'm really using him to enable my primary fire damage dealer, but this is still good. You're still getting more damage on him, so you're taking care of enemies faster. So not a terrible weapon by any means. I would say in the banner, it's still not my highest priority, but once I get, for example, my Leo, my Shun, my On, then his starts becoming like, okay, let me start thinking about putting his in there. if I'm really utilizing my fire team to its fullest effect. So I do eventually want to get it. Like all 5 stars though, I'm going to tell you to not chase it down on this banner. You pick the consolation prizes you want, but only pull on this banner if you're looking to pull on the featured unit. So that's my standard disclaimer on those there. Let's go back into the character sheet and we'll talk about his card sets. So for his card set, there's really only one that I like. You can of course play around, see if you like something differently, but it's this here. It's the control and awareness set. So control, and this says Dominion over here. I think these are translation issues. 2 set effect increases max HP by 12%. So remember, he does a lot of things based on his max HP, so this is helping that out. 4-piece set, when attacking with a skill, deal 8% of own HP as bonus damage to the target. You do have to think about the fact that you're spending your HP, and obviously Cattle can heal that, but this just synergizes fully with what he does. And then for the full set kit here, increase party's fire damage by 6%. When a foe is burning, increase fire damage by 6% more for 2 turns. I mean, considering why I'm bringing him in a team and why you're probably bringing him in a team, I can't think of something more synergistic than more fire damage. So I think this is really going to be your best set that you can pull on him. And then as far as your main stats, you're going to get HP on Sun, so that's always standard. And by the way, I've not optimized my cards at this stage of the game, so I'm going to have all sorts of random stuff here. But honestly, it's going to all be HP percent. You're going to want HP percent on all of your cards for your main stat. And then for substats, again, you want HP percent. You want to boost your max HP as much as possible. And then maybe some effective hit rate. I'm not sure if they changed the term of that here in global, but it's what allows you to land statuses like burn. So those are going to be your 2 most critical things, because you want to land your burns and you want as much HP as possible on key. I'd be less concerned about the other stats. Just, if you can get those on there, that's going to be a really good card for you. And that's his cards. All right, so later on when we get mental image, if you're looking to build into his, if you're using your limited resources to build his, the way that I would personally prioritize this is first this one here, because this is your skill 1 and your skill 2. Then I would really push this HP percent up to, again, just stuff works on max HP, so keep that going. Then I would consider going here for the highlight. This is your skill 3, which again, I use a lot less often, but you get the highlight, which is always a wonderful thing to boost that fire damage. And then in here is your increased effect. So this helps land like your burns, whatever. And then finally, you've got increased stats like life. And so as you get the bells, feel free to pump them into here. And so I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, and of course, just put your bells as you have them. That'd be kind of the order I would personally follow if I was going to put stats or resources, especially rare ones, into his mental image later on down the road when this opens up. All right, so we're gonna go back in the game here, and I'm going to go into one of the bosses in the second palace. And this is like one of the side bosses, so not like a story boss. And I'm doing this because honestly, everything dies too fast on the stamina quests. And I want to show you how his skills kind of interact. That way you get an idea of like what you're trying to accomplish to get this damage. So I'll run with my fire team here. Nothing crazy. This is a team I've recommended before. And I'm not going to try to be optimal in terms of like using other DPS. But right now, if you look at the enemy, I've got nothing crazy going on here. They're just, kind of at their base. And then on my allies, you can see I don't have any, additional effects going on outside of his normal increased fire damage here. This is just, it's going to come with him there. And so the first thing I need to do is apply burn. It just so happened that I didn't apply burn on the way in. And so this is kind of nice because it's going to show you almost your worst case scenario. So I'm going to put this on and he's going to get a burn stack going. And so now he's going to start taking burn damage and I can start enabling my other powers, and I'm just going to guard with everybody else. And then hopefully I survive. So I'm not going to use on. We're just going to see what happens with just Key using his stuff here. So we all take some damage. You just saw that he took some burn damage, which, of course, burn is a great effect. It gives you that, I think it's 5% HP loss per turn. So it's a nice way to just get, that flat percent damage going. So now, I've got one with burn, no one else. And I'm going to toss this out again. So because I'm going to use it on someone with burn, it's going to turn into an AoE skill. There we go. So it hit everybody. And check this out. I got lucky and everybody got burn applied. So it doesn't necessarily, it's a chance. So it's not always going to hit everybody. And if you bump your effective hit rate up. That's what can, help ensure it's going to land more consistently. And now again, I'm just going to guard and I'll throw a heal out. I'm actually going to use, actually I'm not going to use the highlight just yet. I'm going to just heal with him. And hopefully we don't get demolished and I have to re-record this. So hopefully he can live. And again, I'm just going to guard with her. I'm not going to do anything but use Ki right now. Now that attack you saw there is because of An's awarenesses, so I can't stop that from happening. Okay, let these guys do their thing. They can heal, don't really care. We're not trying to beat this. We're trying to actually keep them alive at this point so I can demonstrate this. Okay, and so now we're back. So I'm going to save this highlight for a second. I want to show you where we're at as far as buffs. So again, we've got burn on the enemies, nothing else crazy going here. And then on our allies, like if I go down to An, you can see she's got Starfire, that's actually from Cattle. We've got some shock, she's taking that from other enemies, but I don't really have, anything crazy going on here in terms of additional effects and buffs, except for increased fire damage. So that's of course nice. And then you'll see that over here on Cattle. And then on Ki, he's got his own buffs, so he's going to have a few more. And so really what we're looking at is we're starting to get this increased fire damage. So keep your eyes on this. It's one turn, no stacks over here. Now, I've got all these people burning. I want to start building my chosen stacks, and I want to get them into Sacred Flame. So now you can see I've got, technicals going over here. This guy's also weak. This is because we have that burning element, and you can see this kind of extra effect on the target. This means that I'm going to put them in that Sacred Flame. So now when I do this, besides AI, who's got weakness, I do my, really cool AoE move, and I've got this icon for Sacred Flame. I'm going to choose not to use this here. So now if I look at the enemies, you can see it on here. On action, deal fire damage based on max HP. So on top of the burn, they've got this added effect to take more. And then when taking fire damage, increase elemental ailment damage taken by 30%. That's like your burn damage. So now I'm starting to get some effects on the enemy. And again, if I go back to my people here, you see that I still have this increased fire damage down here. Ki has, his stuff that I was showing you before, and he's got this chosen one. And now I've got 5 stacks. So increase party's fire damage by 5%. And then when using a skill, deal 4% max HP. So I've got this going on, I've got some other buffs, I've got awareness and dominion going on, so I'm starting to really kind of amp into some more fire damage, and the enemies have double effects here. Now I'm going to go into my highlights. So the highlights will put burn on everybody, so if somebody wasn't burning, this would put burning on them for 2 turns. Cool attack. And if I go back in, you're going to see on the highlight, increased fire damage taken by 25.9%. So, we've got that extra effect. So we're really stacking this fire burn damage. And this is going to, cause us that kind of cascading win over here where they're just taking more and more and more. And so someone like an An can really dish out the damage at this point. So I've kind of teed everything up, and they're in Sacred Flame. So again, I'm just going to guard here. I probably need to heal just to make sure I don't die. There we go. And then again, I'm intentionally not going to use An just because I want you to see what damage is happening without even using my main DPS. So now we can see he just took damage, that's from Sacred Flame, and then he takes burn damage again. So a good chunk of damage from those 2 effects going off right there. And of course they're going to do all the things that they're going to do, but we're chipping away at the enemy, and I haven't even dropped anything from An. I haven't tried to buff anybody with Wonder. I'm trying to keep them alive with Cattle, who's now got Forget, so he's not going to be able to heal. Oh well. But you can see what's going on and how we're starting to stack this damage. So now you're fully set up. And this is where you kind of have to ask, what is my next path here? Because I just used the highlight, I've got a 2-turn burn. So if I look over here, it's got 1 more turn left because they just took their turn. So keep in mind, like, it ticks down on their turns, not my turns. And so I can do a couple things here. I can go back into my skill 1 and try to get the burn to land on everybody and extend it again. I can go back into my skill 2, because if you look at my Sacred Flames now, my Sacred Flame has 1 turn left, but they're burning, so I can extend that. Or I can go into my skill 3 and try to take damage on a single enemy, but then no, I have to go back into reapplying burns, kind of starting that cycle all over. So this is why I don't use skill 3 a lot, is because I need to manage burns and I need to manage, my Sacred Flames. So I'm going to pick my skill 2. I'm going to take that, extra damage while they have everything going off here. And now if I look, Sacred Flame's back up to 2 turns. So this is kind of how I think about playing Key, is how do I manage the burns and the Sacred Flames? And check this out, these guys are half health. This is one of the arguably harder fights, not the hardest fight in this dungeon, but one of the harder ones, and I haven't even used my damage dealer at any point here. And I don't have like perfect card sets. They're decent. I've got the right set bonuses for him, but it's not like the greatest card sets. They're not leveled, they're not yellow rarity. And just for the hell of it, you know, why don't we go ahead and drop a nuke from on? So we'll put this down and see what happens. It's not going to one-shot him or anything like that, spoiler alert. We'll let her do her thing. Yeah, and so she's doing some really good damage there. We're not going to use that. And then I can come in and do her skill 3. Usually you would have done her skill 1 by now and buffed her attack. But yeah, I mean, just look at all this extra damage coming through. And because I'm synergizing a fire team that does burn damage and scales off of these things, the damage just adds up and up and up. And unfortunately, you know, I'm forgotten here, so I could die. But this is what I want to show you, is kind of the, I don't know, the way I think about using skills. It's not always a set rotation of do A then B. A lot of characters, yes, do work that way, but it's not every single character. And because it's not every character, sometimes you have to look at what is the intent of what I'm trying to drive with this character that's going to get me the best damage or the best survivability or whatever that character's strength is. And so for me, that's really what I try to think about as I go through these battles. So like right there, I want to burn on the other guys again. And so I just used his skill 1 to spread that into an AoE because he was already burning. And I already have Sacred Flame up, so I know I'm going to have now both of those effects going. And so it's just a good way to kind of evaluate the situation you're in. So this is not a character I can say always go skill 1, skill 3, skill 3. It's going to very much be a, you know, look at the situation that you're in. Do you need more burns? Did you just use your highlight so you have 2 turns of burns? Do you need to renew your Sacred Flame? You know, what is that thing that's going to give you the best effect in that moment? And then how do I enable, you know, my team to be better? In this case, I want to enable on to do more fire damage. So I want to focus on my burn stacks. I want to focus, you know, on getting Chosen One stacks up. And you can see here, I'm not playing anything close. And see, here's a place I can actually use this. I'm not even in a place where I'm close to being optimal. And as a demonstration, I still beat that fight because fire damage can be so effective. And this is why this team can carry itself for so long in this game, is you just get all that status effect that's just chunking away health. So a little bit longer of a demonstration there. I hope that you don't mind that. But I wanted to really kind of demonstrate the way you want to get his stacks rolling and how you need to think about, do I use this, that, or the other at this particular turn of this, you know, fight that I'm in. So that's him. Would I recommend him for fire team? Absolutely. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. And so the question is, would he be useful anywhere else? Not a ton of teams, honestly, but there's 2 things that come to mind. One is any sort of dot team. So if you're on like a curse team, I think is it Sepia, the other curse unit, the individual one? He could be good there because then you're stacking, you know, dot types. But he really is going to be his best in the fire team. And considering he's a 4-star and you can, you know, pretty much bet that you'll eventually pull him and possibly even A6 him, I think that even if all you're getting out of him is a great team for on, you are in a winning category. This is a powerhouse of a team that can do you well for a very, very long time. So, you know, maybe he doesn't take S rank on any tier lists, but think about him in the grander scheme of your whole team and check out how much I was doing before I even launched On's first attack. He can chunk away some health. So I think he's worth it. Again, I would not chase a standard banner 4-star. That doesn't make any sense at all. You'll eventually just pull them. And for his weapon, I would say that, you know, after you get a couple of the bigger ones, I would then maybe start thinking about prioritizing his in there, but I wouldn't chase that as my number 1 unless you are just in love with the fire team. That's just, you know, how you have your fun. So I do recommend him for the fire team. And, you know, once you pull him, I would recommend building him to really enable on. And if you don't have him, that might be where you look at like a Leon to just help buffer, but he is going to be a better slot here. And as far as your healer, I would use Cattle just because he can also drop burn. So it's a full mono synergistic team. And as long as you're surviving, then I don't think you need to worry about like a better healer, like a, you know, Miriam when she comes out here in a couple days, actually, from when I'm recording this. But that's my thoughts on Key. I think he's a great unit in the context of the fire team. He's not going to stand off on his own DPS, of course. That's not his role. So with that, my friends, as always, let me know who else you want to see in the comments. I'm going to get through as many as I can. And until our next video or live stream, please take care of yourselves.